Hello, my name is AJ. This is my vlog for Module 6 Unit 3 Activity 1, and I'm going to be reflecting on a few different prompts about reading, starting with the process and purpose of reading. So from my understanding, the process of reading is kind of like the basic methods, or whatever you want to call them, of reading. For example, we have to learn how to read, we have to have phonemic awareness and understand phonics well, to decode words, and our fluency and our comprehension of the text that we read. This is all the process as we read through various texts. We also have to know the syntax, like just basic sentence structures, and how those sentence structures break down and give us information. For the purpose of reading, I would say obviously for entertainment. A lot of people will read just for entertainment, but also reading can give an individual acquisition of knowledge or new ideas. It can also help readers to learn or to challenge themselves to think critically. So I think these are some of the purposes that come to mind first. For the role of morphology and contextual analysis on vocabulary development, morphology is, from my understanding, when you have a word and we basically alter the base word. A really simple example of this would be prefixes and suffixes. These change the meaning of the word, or alter. Sometimes it doesn't actually change the meaning of the word, it just gives another version of the word. And then for contextual analysis, I would say about this, it is about reading kind of between the lines, reading around vocabulary words, trying to figure out or make inferences about the meaning of words we may not understand. So the role of these on vocabulary development is probably to be able to expand our vocabulary using what we know. So for morphology, using the base words that we might be familiar with. For contextual analysis, using the words surrounding an unknown or a new word that we don't know yet. For evidence-based practices about teaching phonemic awareness to English learners, I think one of the most important, and maybe the one that I would utilize the most, is scaffolding. Scaffolding has been very useful for me for breaking down not only phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary. It's, as a teacher who teaches English as a second language, scaffolding and learning how to scaffold properly and effectively has been a great tool and a great way to help students understand the content you're teaching easier, a little bit faster, and more effectively. So I would say scaffolding is one of the most important things, because for phonemic awareness, for phonics, you have to start from the very bottom with the very basics. If they don't know those basics, then they can't move on, or they can't understand the concepts of reading itself. So this is the one that I would like to touch on for evidence-based practices. For English learners' home language, I think actually this can be utilized effectively as long as you are using it appropriately, which means not too much and not relying on it. Every language kind of has like their own phonics system, I'm assuming. I'm not too familiar with that many languages, but for Chinese, for example, for Mandarin, there are several sounds in their language that sounds similar to English sounds. There's also several sounds that are not present in the English language, but also on the flip side, there's sounds in English that are not present in Mandarin. So I would say, if I were to give like a rough percentage, maybe 70 to 80% of the sounds can be shared in a pretty close way. So in that way, when you're using the native language when teaching English phonics, it can they can make a connection, and they can kind of like bridge the gap in what they might be unfamiliar with, if that makes sense, as long as it's used appropriately. For example, my experience, I teach English, and I find that a lot of students can't make certain sounds. For example, the TH, I think it's a soft TH, The students, they don't have this in Mandarin, so they often use the F sound, and you can see it with their mouth, like so for this kind of situation, you can't really bridge the gap too much. You just have to like train the mouth to make the certain sound, and the tongue to be in the right position to make that sound. But for the actual F sound, there is they do use this in the English language, in the Mandarin language, sorry. Moving on to the next part is the necessary components to achieve effective comprehension, including well-developed language, multiple high-order thinking process, self-correction. For this part, I would say for developing comprehension, first they need to understand the vocabulary, and they need to understand the content, right, that they're learning. And in order, this is also in a way kind of, it has like its steps, and it has, each step is connected, but if you don't have that kind of basic foundation, you can't really think in a higher order, and you can't self-correct or anything like that. So I think in order to develop the language, they need to start with the foundation, which would be the vocabulary. They can move on to grammar, sentence structures, and then when they go to higher order thinking processes, they can learn to analyze critically when they're reading more difficult texts after they've built up that foundation. And then for self-correction, in the cohort's literacy guide, the one with all the vocabulary, I touched on one that was like metacognition. This is basically an individual's ability to be like self-aware of how they learn and what they're learning, and kind of the position that they're in the progress of their learning. So I think if students can kind of get into this way of thinking, then they can self-correct very effectively. And then for the last part is about evidence-based practices, how evidence-based practices can be utilized to improve comprehension in English learners, including those with reading difficulties, dyslexia, etc. I think for this one that we've talked about a lot through the course is going to be differentiation. Not only is this effective for those with those who might be challenged in learning English, or reading challenge, or with certain conditions like dyslexia, but differentiated learning can be effective in any way. So because every student, every child, every person, they learn most effective in different ways. And so if we kind of mix and match, and we utilize different practices and different teaching methods and different resources, for example, audio, video, using pictures, using games, using technology, I think this is, in my opinion, just one of the most important and kind of one of the most talked about evidence-based practices that we can utilize to improve comprehension for English learners. Thank you.